Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. First of all, without further ado, I'm just going to show you what it looks like. So there's just going to be a little bit of a musical break, and then we'll get into the details, or I'll show you the draft that I used to actually come up with it. Let me talk about the fabric first, actually, because this project was inspired and driven by the fabric. In general, there's two ways you come up with a project, I think, in my own opinion. You are either driven by the pattern and then you try and find a fabric that fits the pattern, or you are driven by the fabric first and foremost and you try and find something that fits the fabric. In general, I tend to be a more fabric-driven seamstress. I wait for the fabric to speak to me. I loved this fabric when I saw it at Fabrics for All. It's a Lady McElroy, and it's like a viscose crepe fabric, and it's got like a really beautiful drape to it. The colors are vintage style colors. And so naturally, when it came to thinking about what I wanted to make with it, I couldn't quite find a pattern already in my pattern collection that suited this fabric. And so I thought, I've got the pattern drafting skills, and this year 2020 I'm trying to do more pattern drafting rather than being lazy and just skipping towards ready-made patterns. And I decided to go ahead and make something out of it. In my head, I knew I wanted something with a kimono sleeve, and I wanted it to be sort of slightly loose fitting in the style of 1940s style dresses. So I've been reading a lot of vintage stuff, and so that's where the inspiration came from. I knew I wanted a boat neck, and I also wanted the kimono style. So I started off with my sloper, and then this is what I developed. So I had a sloper and I did some dot manipulation. So my sloper has 3 dots on it. It's got an armhole dot, a waist dot, and a shoulder dot. And I moved all of those dots, all of that shaping here to the waist itself. And then I turned it into 2 dots or 2 pleats over here. So that was step 1. And I made a toile of just this particular part, and that was all right. That fit fine. And then the next thing that I did was draft the boat neckline. And when I was happy with the boat neckline, after making, I made 2 toiles actually to get the boat neckline just right. I then moved on to sorting out the armhole, and I converted it from a normal armhole to a kimono sleeve armhole. So the first sloper that I worked with was from the Susie Fur, The Architecture of Women's Clothing. And this is a brilliant book in conjunction with the Craftsy/Blueprint. I don't know what they're called now. They keep swinging back and forth. So I'm just going to say Craftsy/Blueprint. But the Susie Fur class, in conjunction with this book, I developed my sloper, which is what I used. And this is the book that I used for the boat neckline, for how to draft the boat neckline. And then for the kimono sleeve, I used the Winifred Aldridge book, because the Architecture of Women's Clothing doesn't actually have that much on kimono sleeves, whereas this one's got a lot more on kimono sleeves. So I used this one for the sleeve part. So I was kind of like dual wielding, using this book there and then this other book over there. So that's how we ended up with this. So that's the center front, and it was cut on the fold. So this is my working pattern. I added seam allowances because when I was making the toiles, I needed to make sure that I had it just right in order to determine whether it's suited. So this is the back pattern piece. Stopping the crunch. So this is the back pattern piece. And on the back, I have a dot because I have a slightly, you can see my back is slightly rounded. I'm not ramrod straight. Need to work on my posture. And that gives it a nice fitting around the back. And we've got a dot over here because I just wanted a little bit of shaping. And then we have the sleeve coming out. And I also have some shaping on the back here. So instead of going straight down, again, because I've got this slightly rounded back, that's in there. So that was the upper bit that I chose. And then for the skirt, initially I was going to do a gathered skirt with it. But when I had it pinned on my dress form, it just didn't look right. The fabric was kind of saying, no, I don't want to be like that. And so I just I let it sit for a couple of days whilst I thought about it, despite the fact that I had this strong desire to finish it. But I have learned from my past experience that I have to listen when the fabric is talking to me. And so the fabric was like, no, I let it sit. And it so happened that we were watching an episode of Horrible Histories, because that's part of my homeschooling the kids. That's how I teach them history. We just watch Horrible Histories. And in it, they were doing a 1940s sketch, and there was a woman there who was dressed in a 1940s style dress. And I loved the flat front A-line skirt attached to the bodice. And I was like, that's what you want to be. Went back to the fabric. The fabric was like, yes, that is what I want to be. And I was like, okay, my precious. And so as it happens, I also have a skirt sloper of an A-line flare skirt. And so I just took this, and this is what I used. Now, this was drafted as a standalone skirt, so it's a little bit snugger. So when it came to cutting it out for the dress, I just added a 1/4 of an inch. No, I added a 1/2 an inch here. That's it. I added a 1/2 an inch in total on the front and a 1/2 an inch at the back. So that was, quite correct. I think actually a 1/4 inch. I added a 1/4 inch on each side seam, just so that it's got the hang that fits the waist. And that's how it came together. So that's my skirt and my top. So what did I call this? I was trying to come up with a name for it. I just have vintage TE here. I have no idea what I was going. But yeah, I'm calling this my lovely vintage frock because I feel very lovely and very vintagey. Sewing it up was dead easy, very, very quick. I finished the neckline with a bias binding, self-bias binding, actually. I could do a facing, but I really liked the drape that the fabric has, so I didn't do the drape. So I'm just going to show you the inside out of the dress. As you can see, these are the pleats over here, and this is the kimono sleeve, and this is the finishing on the neckline. Okay, so I interfaced this edge where the zipper was going to go in, because this fabric is really fine. I knew that it was going to pull when it was sewn onto the zipper tape. And this meant that the invisible zipper came out really nicely. And you've got the back darts over there. Since the skirt pattern is an A flare pattern, the side seam is cut on the bias slightly. So after I finished sewing up the dress, before I did the hem, I had to leave it on the dress form for a couple of days so that the hem could drop. And so after a couple of days, the hem was a little bit uneven, and then I went and I cut it whilst it was on the dress form. And then I let it rest again for another day, and it didn't move after that. And then I did the hem. But it is well worth it. I considered making a belt, but I was like, can't be asked. The leftovers, I used them to make a skirt for my daughter, and she loves the skirt, so we're twinning on that. That was a quick run through of this self-drafted dress, my lovely vintage frock that I am so happy with. I went out to pick up supplies for our upcoming camping trip. We're going camping in a couple of weeks, and I have never walked taller, felt more ladylike. It's lovely. It was quite a hot and muggy day, but I felt nice and cool in the dress itself. So love it. I will do a separate video where I talk about the different pattern drafting books that I use and which ones I think are better than the others and which ones are my favorites that I seem to keep coming back to. But these are the two that I used for this particular dress here to develop the pattern. Now, I plan on making another one of these. I haven't quite yet figured out which fabric I'm going to use, but it's a very comfortable dress and I like the style. I gave myself a bit more ease around the waist just so that I've got space to eat. Let me just show you. So, it's got some ease so that when I eat, I can go, but otherwise it's like that. And that's the beauty of drafting patterns for yourself. You can kind of think about whether you're going to be wearing this to feast or not to feast. So you can make it a little bit more snugger or less snug. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed the video. And if you did, do give it a big thumbs up down below. If you haven't already, do subscribe and turn on your notification bells because I love sewing and everything to do with sewing. And so I kind of put out a lot of sewing content. Some of it is random sewing stuff. Some of it is kind of like traditional sewing stuff. So hit the subscribe button and I will see you in the next video. Until next time, happy sewing. Bye.